And what about Hollow Man? Like from memory, because it's so long ago, but again, living in Australia, I was kind of very disconnected from the film industry. So I was working in VFX, but a lot smaller projects. Hollow Man Tippett did the mouse scene, right? Or what other sequences did you guys do?
Well, it was the show was split. It was Scott Anderson, I think, on the Sony side, was doing the dissection of Kevin Bacon, basically the first, really layering a human being when he slowly dissolves into, transparency. We were basically, once he's invisible, we had Tippett, and again, it was a Paul Verhoeven show, so Phil and Paul have a history. We were basically responsible for the rest of the film, where we had to sort of show an invisible Kevin Bacon through all different elements: water, fire, smoke. He jumps in a pool, and that was, again, it was a lot of fun. I did that show together with Craig Hayes, because Craig really sort of he used to be a machinist before he started doing animation. So he really goes back into the shop, the metal shop, and or the wood shop, and he starts building stuff just to sort of find out, how are we going to do this, or how does it even look like? I mean, I remember we had long discussions, some over beer, just to go, how does an empty hull of a person look underwater? So to us it was, because we knew that if you have like a Coke bottle underwater, there's a lot of refraction going on. But how would a human body who is much bigger look like, and assuming that the thickness is the same? So we built plastic models of humans, and then went to the public pool, and I'm a diver, so went down, checked it out. We shot references, and then tried to figure out how to do it. I mean, that was the time when they had time for VFX on set. We shot everything with motion control. So every take, we had the motion control camera that was live operated by the DOP, and then recorded. So we could do a take with Kevin and one without. And that's how we sort of, we took him out of the plate, but then we had to, of course, add, like, for example, that in order to make him visible, they kick off the sprinkler system. So all of a sudden you see droplets on a body, and we were thinking, how does it look like, really, droplets running down features of a person? So I remember one afternoon we actually we bought one of those kids pools, and filled it up with milk.
Okay.
And then somebody volunteered to get in there and then slowly emerge. And we shot that, did a high contrast of it, just to see what actually happens. And it was this kind of fun. I mean, it was a huge playground, but it always had a purpose. And working for Verhoeven is great, because he really sticks to what he wants to do. So when he does a board 3 years earlier, it'll be that board. He's not going to go, oh, now that I see it, why don't we try this? He sticks to it. He's I mean, sort of like Hitchcock-like filmmaker, that by the time he shoots, the movie's done in his head.
What was it like working with Verhoeven in terms of like visual effects? Obviously, he's got a big background doing special effects like RoboCop, etc. I've met him a couple of times, more through personal relationships, just met up for lunch or whatever, but I've never worked with him. I was curious, like, has he always been very quick to adapt to new technology, or to put trust in the right people to know what they need to do?
I think it's more trust, because I mean, RoboCop and Starship Troopers and Hollow Man was all the relationship, Tippett and Verhoeven. I don't think Paul really cares about the technology, as long as it looks cool. What he likes to do is he likes to sort of overdo stuff. So sometimes we did stuff that is like, well, this is physically accurate. He would say, well, what happens if you double it? And so he had a little bit of, or has a little bit of Tarantino. Because if it looks good, let's do some more. And that was particular, for example, I was doing the blood sequence where Kevin Bacon is invisible, and one of the nurses or the doctors, she's locked into the freezer, and she finds those blood bags. she opens them up and just flings them in the room, and slow, one by one, a bloody Verhoeven, a bloody Kevin Bacon comes, is visible, which is a very strong image by itself. I mean, it could have been ink, but Paul wanted blood. And then again, we had this whole experiment. It's like, okay, you see the front cover with blood, but then there's nothing, and then you see the backside. So it was tricky, and it's one of my favorite sequences, actually, because it's so graphic.
Yeah, no, me too. Like, it definitely stood out. I think stuff like that is just fun anyway, let alone the backstory you're sharing about all the experimenting, which sounds just as fun as well. So you also, just talk about Golden Compass, you worked on the wolf sequence, is that right? Or, yeah, what was it like? You guys you won an Academy Award for that one as well, right?
No, that was, I think we were, because we came in as another studio, and I mean, that was a huge show that was split up in, I don't know how many shops, and we were sharing forgot the name of the bear, but we basically did the wolves. And then we got the show, and we really, I mean, that was a project that was, for me, for the first time, it felt like, okay, this is how remote working works. But the cool thing was that the animators really could do what they wanted. I mean, they really they're so vicious, those wolves. And we sort of also, the framing where we place them, I mean, we didn't talk much to the director about it. It was mostly, I think it was Mike Fink. He was sort of giving us direction, but also sort of let us do. And most of the time that works the best.